Yes. And welcome everybody to the 12 o'clock show with Mayor Joe and an incredibly important guest who's joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Todd. This is Todd Valentine. He is the Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, our Congresswoman here in the Franklin County side of Reynoldsburg. And apparently she's got to, be in chambers or some, voting on something or crazy things like that. So her schedule did not allow her to be here, but thank you, Todd, for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mayor. Really, really appreciate being here. The Congresswoman definitely sends her regards. She is in Africa right now, in Tanzania. She's a part of a congressional delegation that went to Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, and I know I'm missing one other country, but she's in Tanzania right now at the moment.
Well, I guess that's a decent enough excuse. I think the best one outside of that came down with COVID. So
right.
The Congresswoman wins this one by far. Well, I appreciate you coming in. There are a couple of, general questions that I wanted to talk about. Obviously we're, winding down the month of February and we are celebrating Black History Month. So are there any events or anything that recognition wise that the Congresswoman has participated in? Obviously, you mentioned going to Africa. Obviously, there's going to be some connections with that. But was there anything specific that she had been doing in the past to help recognize Black History Month?
Yeah, she's done a number of activities for Black History Month. One being she participated in a lot of events with Martin Luther King III. She's done some marches here in DC. Of course, she's now in Africa, carrying the mantle for what we're doing here in stateside. One of the more significant things that she's done for Black History Month, she sits on the Joint Economic Committee, which is a combination of House members and Senate members, and she led a new analysis or report on the economic trends of and barriers of Black Americans. And that report, I can send you the link to that to the extent that may be something of interest to you. But that was a big lift for us, and we wanted to get that done in honor of Black History Month. There's a lot of a good analysis in there, and trying to figure out exactly how to move the needle in housing and education and in economic progress in general. So that report is one of the highlight banners that she's done for Black History Month this year.
Well, again, a lot of times, we tend to focus on some ceremonial aspects of Black History Month, and this obviously it goes way beyond that. Well, before I ask my next question, just wanted to recognize State Representative Humphrey has joined us. So she's going to come on after in a little bit here, but I know that, we've got, like I said, not one guest, but two this time. Now, for being the Chief of Staff, what are your primary responsibilities? So when somebody says, you're a Chief of Staff, what exactly do you do for those people that maybe have never watched The West Wing or something along those lines?
Right. So it's a great question. I mean, being the Chief of Staff is a really rewarding experience. It's like you're dancing to your favorite song, except it never ends. So in my role, it's managing up, which is managing the Congresswoman, managing down, which is managing our staff of about 16, and it's also managing myself. So there's different tools for each of those components. Overall, what I set out to do on behalf of the Congresswoman is execute her vision, maintain her values, and promote her strategic priorities. And that is, socializing those not only amongst our staff, but also to our stakeholders, our constituents, and our constituent groups in Franklin County as well. And being the chief is really sharing the goals and vision that the Congresswoman lays out. Is promoting superior execution on some of her key initiatives. It's asserting intellectual leadership, and I hire people that are a lot smarter than me. It's maintaining, again, focus on her strategic priorities, and it's really making sure, in my mind, that our office is the best office to work on the Hill. So trying to figure out all that, and there's different tools to get that done.
And that's just what's scheduled, let alone all the other stuff that comes up, I assume.
Oh yes. Yeah, but
familiar with that.
It's great. It's really great.
Now, is there a specific time of year that is busier than other times of the year? Or what is that kind of the busiest time for your office?
So that's a good question. We're always busy. There's really no, especially in the majority, there's really no downtime for us. And she's also the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and she's also the chair of the subcommittee on diversity and inclusion under the House Financial Services Committee. So we're always busy. But I think you will see a spike, obviously during budget season. You'll see a spike around appropriation season as well. Those, we're always really traditionally extra busy around those months. And then also, I think on the other side of the coin, as we head towards the November midterms, it looks a lot different for every member. We're grassroots, boots on the ground. We're in districts, across the nation, advocating for our goals, principles, values, et cetera, and why we should be back here again next Congress. So, but we're always extremely busy.
Well, a lot of municipalities, actually just got done with a meeting with a couple of local mayors surrounding Reynoldsburg that are also in the same district. We're really excited for this infrastructure bill. There's a lot of longstanding issues with roads, bridges, and things like that. What everybody wants to know, and mostly this is just me asking, when do you think that we're going to start seeing some of those funds, trickle down into the municipalities? I know a lot of that is directed to us. We're still waiting from guidance and seeing what's going on. But do you have any insight on, basically, to be blunt, when we're getting our money? I got a lot of roads to go.
Yes, sir. So generally speaking, the transportation funds will be distributed through DOT, as they have been in the past. There's a formula that they use for state agencies, and I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. That those municipalities, how those municipalities will see those funds. I think Ohio, I think is receiving like 9.2 of federal aid for highway and et cetera, and 483 of that is going towards roads and bridges or bridge replacement. Not sure exactly the timeline on that. I mean, once we get that out the door, we voted on it, get it out the door. Now we have to start talking to our counterparts at the state level to see what that looks like. But I think what I'm looking at here, I just pulled this really briefly. This may be helpful. What we're seeing is mass transit is going to be a big thing. There's going to be more than 1.2 billion over 5 years to improve public transportation options across the state. Electric vehicle charging was another really big thing for us that we wanted to do. So 140 million over 5 years to support expansion of EV charging networks. Ohio will have another opportunity to apply for another $2 billion in grant funding dedicated to EV charging. Airports, $253 million for infrastructure development for airports over 5 years. Water infrastructure, 1.4 billion over 5 years. Broadband, which is critically important. We'll see a minimum of 1 million to help bolster broadband coverage across the state. And then $26 million over 5 years to protect against wildfires. Now, when that money actually starts to trickle down, that's a very good question. But it's out the door and it's being managed through DOT. But the good news is that it's coming.
All right, the check is in the mail, but if you find out when it's being sent, just feel free and let us know. I know the big thing, I mean, obviously everybody likes to talk about roads, but specifically in Reynoldsburg, one of the issues that we have is some of our water infrastructure. We have a lot of communities that are significantly older. We're talking built in the 50s and 60s, and there's a lot of infrastructure issues that just had not been addressed, in the 60 years since then. So we're trying as best as we can to deal with it. We've been dealing with, issues of excessive rain, and that rain has kind of led to some flooding in certain areas of town. And a lot of that, deals with some of our infrastructures. How do we get that water pumped out faster so that way it stays out of our communities, in their neighborhoods, in their basements? I know we've applied for a couple of grants that we're waiting on, but anytime that there's money for water and infrastructure improvements, that is a huge thing. So definitely for everybody in Reynoldsburg who's watching, the moment those grants start popping up, you bet we're going to go ahead and apply for that. Well, I know you're incredibly busy. Do we have any questions for the Chief of Staff? Okay, so you just bypassed the roughest part of the show. No tough questions. You're more than welcome to stay on, but you're incredibly busy. I understand that you've got a lot of things on your plate. I do appreciate you taking the time. Best wishes to the Congresswoman on her travels overseas, and hopefully for a safe return. One of these days I'm going to get her on this show. I'm going to try. Got plenty of time, but one of these days I'm going to get her on here.
We will make it happen.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll go ahead and move over. Representative Humphrey, how are you?
I am fine. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I figured you would enjoy listening to some of that, considering, that's part of that same district, the shared district.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you coming. You're from the 26th House District, or whatever the House District that it's being called today. Maybe by the end of the day, it might be another number. But for right now, we'll go with the 26th, which is, again, is another one of those districts that is, while it's not in Reynoldsburg, it's right against Reynoldsburg. There's a lot of shared territory and borderlands between it. So I do appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today. So I'm going to start off really with the first question is, we did talk about what we're doing as far as celebration of Black History Month. So what does Black History Month mean for you?
Well, I think, and you'll probably hear this a lot, and thank you for the question, but Black History Month to me is more than a month. It's something that should be celebrated all year long. The ideas and the inventions and the creations of Black leaders and Black people, celebrating those and uplifting those and highlighting those all year long. Now, while I appreciate a month, it's something for me that I just recognize yearly, all year long. And so it's an important time for not just people of color, but people, who may not look like me, to learn of something new as it relates to African Americans, and that can be celebrated and that can be respected. So Black History Month is really important to me, but I am the type of person that celebrates Black History Month really just all year long. So thank you for the question.
No, I'm right there with you. It's when I was teaching, that's one of the things that we tried to do. It was more of like a highlight aspect. And I think most of the guests that we've had on this month have said something very similar, that it's not just the 1 month, that it is something that is year long, but to highlight certain things and certain parts of it. I would say that you're, kind of busy at the State House. I know there's a lot going on. Other than that boundary thing, what else is going on at the State House right now? Or is that really the only thing anybody's talking about?
Honestly, yes, that is the biggest thing. That's what we talk about in caucus. That's what we talk about, in our group chats and things like that, is worrying about, how the districts are going to be drawn. And I know that will come up in another question down the line, but that is something that everybody is worried about. Everybody wants to talk about and wants to, figure out a solution and what's been happening. And without going into too much detail, it's just been so much uncertainty of what, the future holds. And I know we can't tell the future, but this isn't something that we should be guessing about as far as how lines are drawn and who will be where and when to move if you have to move, and it's just a big old mess, and that's what the focus is on right now. Obviously, when we have session, we go in and we work on what needs to be worked on. We fight for our constituents, and all that. But the focus in all of our minds, especially like in the back of our minds, is will I be here next year? And depending on a commission to kind of figure that out. So it's a lot, but without going into too much detail, that is what's going on in the State House.
Well, I know there's a couple of bills that, and I know this is one of the questions I had about, there are a couple of bills out there that residents have talked about, whether it's bills that impact school funding, whether it impacts business development, whether it impacts municipal taxation, things like that. The easiest way to get in touch with you is basically if somebody wanted to reach out and say, hey, I want to offer testimony, or I want to let you know what I'm thinking about, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me is I'll start with my number, and it's 614-466-8010. Again, that number is 614-466-8010. And my email is rep26@ohiohouse.gov. But I want to say this. I really, take pride in myself for being an accessible representative. So like if you find me on Facebook, Instagram, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you're not contacting, the right platform. Like literally I have conversations with people on my Instagram all the time, my Facebook. So if you come across it and you have a question, just feel free to, send me a message, and I'll respond, because that's just kind of how I, handle my office, is making sure that I'm accessible. And so, yeah, and all of my social media platforms are Latyna M.Humphrey. So if you come across it and you have a question, you can DM me.
Well, I've been known to have a conversation or two on Facebook here in Reynoldsburg, so it's a good thing. So, you have this year, obviously, the election might be, later on, but, what are some of the goals that you have this year? What do you want to do and trying to accomplish this year, given all the wackiness of an election year?
No, that's a good question. And so I should preface by saying that I was appointed to Ohio House District 26 in October. And when I got into office, I created my priorities based off of the conversations that I had with my constituents, or what I perceived to be my constituents, during the appointment process. So I went out and I did a community needs-based assessment, and I talked to folks. And then from those conversations, I created, my priorities. And so just to give you a background and tell you what I'm working on, my priorities are criminal justice reform, with a focus on alternatives to incarceration. Also want to focus on reentry and returning citizens and restored citizens. And then also prison reform. I got a lot of that when I was out in the community. And then in addition to that, affordable housing. Seniors should be able to stay in their homes if that's what they so choose. And folks deserve to live in safe and quality housing. Now, in addition to that, workforce development and economic opportunity. And what we know about the district as it is now, House District 26, is that the yearly income in HD 26 is about $42,000 a year. The yearly average income in the state of Ohio is about $56,000 a year. And that is a big difference. And we could attribute that to race, the types of jobs that are within the district. But the bottom line is that it is a problem. And then we also know that folks are in the labor force at the same rate in the district, on average in the state. 77.1% for House District 26 folks are in the labor force. 77.9% of folks are in the labor force in the state of Ohio. People are going to work, but they're making, vastly different, income amounts. And so I want to focus on that. And out of those priorities, even now, I've introduced legislation or working on legislation in all of those buckets. And so as it relates to criminal justice reform, I have introduced a bipartisan bill with 31 co-sponsors besides my joint sponsor on House Bill 511. That says that all parole board hearings need to be recorded. And I know that may sound like, oh, well, that should already be done, especially because it's done in the court of common pleas in municipal court. But the bottom line is that does not happen during parole board hearings. And so that is a truly bipartisan bill, and I'm so proud of it. And I do think that that bill does have the support it needs to get, through the House. Now, I'm also working with our Franklin County Auditor's Office on rental registration. And so as most of you all that are watching, and as you know, Mayor Begany, is that, if you rent out a property, you need to have that property registered. But a lot of times what people do is they put their LLCs, and then that makes it hard to make contact. And so what we're saying is, same rules apply. You need to register, but you have to put your name or a property manager's name and their contact information. And if not, you'll be fined, just as you would be, regularly if you were just to put your LLC. So we're introducing that, and we're working on that with the Franklin County Auditor's Office. And I'm currently working with some unions to kind of address the workforce development piece. But so what I've been working on so far in the 4 months that I've been in office is staying true to my priorities and really being invested in my community. Because as you know, and I want the viewers to know, is that I really believe in community. And I believe in making sure that we have the relationships and the bonds needed to move forward, and to move forward as a healthy district and a healthy, vibrant district. And so we've been getting to work, and we've been, having consistent conversations with stakeholders, community members, having community conversations. And I'll go over those, the events we've had so far, and we can move on to the next question, because I could go on and on. But so far, we've had a faith-based leaders meeting with about 30 pastors in one large room, obviously social distance, but had conversations about their concerns as being leaders of their congregations. And then we had a community conversation over at Impact concerning reentry, returning citizens. So we had people who are returning, we had stakeholders in the room to have a conversation to kind of help me, again, create, or curate my legislative, priorities and so on. And we've also had a conversation with our Franklin County Auditor on property values, specifically focused on the South Side. But the information applied to anyone really in the county and in the district. We're having a community conversation at the end of the month with school board member Christina Vera for the city of Columbus. And I hold community hours too, a month since I've been in office. And so we're really just trying to make sure that we develop those relationships and that people know that I'm accessible and I'll show up and I'll do my best to fight for them and what their concerns are. So that's why we have a lot of conversations, so that I can figure out what I can do best to help them and bridge gaps or provide resources. So my goals at the State House is to continue to do what I've been doing, and that's hitting the ground running since day one.
Well, you have some great shoes to fill, and it seems like you've got your priorities straight. I love the community aspect. I love talking to the constituents. We talked a little bit about the house maps and things like that. So we already know about that, and nothing new has changed. Maybe we'll find out something after today's hearing or something like that. So I'm going to go with the fun question. There's a lot of things that are good about the position that you're in, and there's probably some things that you're just wondering, gee, I'm so glad I got appointed to this. But what are your favorite parts about being a state representative? What's some of the stuff that kind of makes you happy about being in the position that you're in?
It's really an honor to be in this position, really being able to develop the relationships that I have with community. You're going to consistently hear me, mention things about community, but being able to represent this district has really just been the highlight of my life. Having conversations, having people, come up to me and say, I can't believe you're here. Typically such and such, not talking about a specific, elected official, because that's not what I'm doing, but typically this title doesn't show up to these type of events. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you for taking my call. I have a young woman, who has gone through some, and she doesn't mind me sharing a story, but has gone through some domestic violence issues. My office helped her get safe, find safe housing, all those things. But she texts me every week, every Sunday with an update, how she's doing in school, how the house feels. That's why I like being a state rep, because I get to develop those deep relationships, and those relationships will stick with me, to the day that I leave this earth. And so it has been an honor to be in this position and to show up for people. Lots of times people care about what you do for them, but a lot of times when you show up for them and you're there for them and you're accessible, you make their entire day. Just like last week, I attended 2 funerals in one day, but the families were so proud and so happy that I was there to acknowledge their loved one. It's not only just about introducing legislation. While I'm going to do that and have done that since my first month in office, it's about sending people off when they pass away. It's about showing up to birthday parties. It's about it's about creating relationships. And that's what I love most about being a state rep.
There you go. Well, I'm going to give the questions over. Do we have any questions for? No, you again, apparently no question. They're saving them all for me for after we're done. I'm very appreciative of you taking some time to speak with us today. I know you have a busy schedule. You're more than welcome to stay on, but I'm sure you've got some things, like I said, that you're already busy doing. I'm sure we'll see you at some events in Reynoldsburg. Love to have you out to the Tomato Festival and some other fun things that we've got going on. So it'll be really good. But thanks again for joining us. Again, Representative Humphrey, again, appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right, kind of moving on with our theme of community, we're going to go right into a couple of announcements. The first one, we have Charter Commission. I didn't know if you knew this, but apparently right now we're doing what they call a charter review. The charter review is going through the rules and regulations of the city. And this is a time where you can actually make your comments to the commission to see if there's any suggested changes. Timeline is a very simple thing. You have between now and the deadline of March 14th. So you got a couple of weeks, really about 3 weeks, to email Clerk Prasher about any things that you would like to see changed in our charter. It could be anything as simple as, how many readings we have of a particular subject, or is there a policy or procedure that we do in a council meeting that you think could be more efficient or more transparent or something along those lines. But this is the opportunity to go ahead and do this. This happens every 5 years. The last time that this happened, couple of the issues that came up is to help speed up the process of getting volunteers appointed to Planning Commission and a Building and Zoning and Board of Appeals is to allow the mayor to go ahead and pick that person, and then council confirms them. So that was one thing that made it a little bit quicker of a process all the way across. So that's something that you're able to deal with. Once you make those suggestions in by the 14th, the commission reviews it. All the meetings are open to the public. You're more than welcome to attend. They're here at City Hall. The commission is going to review them and they'll have a vote in-house about whether or not they want to recommend any changes to council. The votes are expected to go to council by June 13th. So whatever the Charter Review Commission comes up with, that will be presented to council on June 13th. That way it goes through the process so they can get it on the ballot for the election this November on November 8th. So again, if you want to get some more information about that, feel free and reach out to Clerk Prasher. She is on vacation this week, so I don't think she's going to be checking her email. But if you have Charter Review Commissions, please go ahead and send them in as well. Next thing I want to kind of give an update. Obviously, we've had a lot of rain in the last week. So I've been driving around at various hours, just checking to see how the weather is dealing with. So I'm going to go ahead and provide an update on a couple of things. First off, we are still in the process of applying for the grant through FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers to do a comprehensive study of the waterways in Reynoldsburg. The city has submitted everything, and right now they're in that review process. I did learn recently that the state has kind of signed off on what they think everything needs to be, and now it's moving up to the next level so they can get reviewed before the grant is awarded. I'm still hearing it's going to be sometime in April before we get any official word. So that's part of it. What we're doing in the meantime are a couple of things. The first thing is we're working with the U.S. Geological Survey to find a location to put I guess you could say an early warning sensor, something that comes up and hopefully the intent is to find some sort of a text alert or some sort of an all call to say, there could be potential flooding in your area, just to let you know that this might happen. So for those homes that are most prone to it, that could go out. Right now, we're trying to find the location. Believe it or not, Black Lake Creek is actually the area in Reynoldsburg is one of those areas that really doesn't have a sensor. So we're trying to figure out what the best location for that is stable and will provide the best amount of data. The other thing is we're continuing to grow our information list for people that are experiencing issues with flooding so we can start to identify the areas that may need improvements. And while I do tend to be on Facebook a lot and I do see when people are talking about, the reality is not everybody's putting their address out there. So if you live in a particular area of town and you personally have experienced some sort of flooding, anything like that, you need to let the city of Reynoldsburg know. You need to call the office and give the contact information, your address, so we can add you to our list. So that way we can provide you with those updates, but also so we can map out exactly where we're seeing things. Most everything is in areas that are very close to or in the flood zone. So those are easy to identify. It's the areas outside of that that are there. This also allows us to make sure that if we need to, like we did last year, we altered where our sewer and sewer inspections and improvements were going. So they were going to be in one part of town, but because of the flooding in the area over off Blacklick Creek and into the Briarcliff neighborhood, we altered that to get into the storm sewers to inspect for cracks, breaks, things of that nature. So if all of a sudden we start seeing a big spike in numbers of issues in certain neighborhoods, then we can obviously kind of shift where our focus is and move it over there. But if we don't know about it, there's not much we can do about it. So if you do have those issues, please let us know. The rest of it is just like a lot of you, every time it rains, I'm holding my breath just as much as everybody else. But we are trying to work on a number of solutions. We're hoping that when this grant goes through, the funding will allow us to kind of really do an in-depth dive of not only the areas that have experienced flooding, but the waterways entirely in Reynoldsburg. Because when water is altered or maneuvered in one way at one location, it's going to affect somewhere else. So we want to make sure that we get the holistic approach to kind of solve some of these issues that have been around really since the beginning of Reynoldsburg. We actually got a number of pictures in from some old tomato festival pageants in the 60s. And some of the pageants actually had to be either delayed or altered because there was flooding in the area that is flooding even today. So this is a longstanding problem that we're dealing with. It just happens to be that we're seeing a lot more frequency now than we had in the past. But if you have questions about that, please feel free and shoot something to us. We are constantly working with it. The representative for FEMA and I are on a first name basis, and every now and then, basically my once a week email, hey, any updates? So he knows it's coming. So we are trying to get that process as fast as possible. So we've got that information. Any questions? All right, next one, Main Street update. All right, so we did survive the closure of Lancaster on Valentine's Day weekend. So now they're moving and continuing to find ways to get that conduit underneath to put all of the power lines below. And then the next step after that is going to be some of the sidewalk and stormwater work to make sure that we alter the flow and make the flow going in the right area. Without getting too much into it, basically the idea is that you want the water to be flowing in a direction that is not going to be perpendicular and hitting right across the bank at the other side. You want it to go with the flow of the water, so that way we're not making any problems worse. So we're really paying attention to how anything is done in the old town and any other future development in the city to make sure that we're paying attention to all of that. I'm going to be giving weekly updates on where we're at in Main Street because we obviously know a lot of work is still yet to be done. But again, we're not through the worst of it yet, but we are through some of the worst parts of it. I did have a chance to go to the Citizen Police Academy, and last week was kind of interesting. It was actually firearms training. So the entire class got an opportunity to go to the firing range, but also to take advantage of some of the training in the non-lethal weapons that are used at RPD. So we all got to shoot a taser at a target, not at anyone individually. We also had a beanbag gun, which was kind of interesting. And then the pepper ball, which is kind of like an airsoft gun that shoots the pepper spray ball that comes in when it hits, it sprays, and that type of thing for crowd control purposes. So it was interesting to see that in addition to, the more traditional firearms class itself. It was incredibly well done. There were a number of people who had never fired a gun before who were, I don't want to call them nervous, but they were anxious. This is not something that they do in their day-to-day life, so they weren't sure of how it would be, but it was incredibly well done. It was incredibly safe, and it was interesting to see, the amount of training that the officers have to go through. And there were some scenarios that were placed about, things that are very commonly said that you hear. Why don't, officers shoot at a such and such a location? Why don't you shoot in the leg, or why don't you shoot at that? And some of the drills that were put in, and keep in mind, we're all amateurs. There was nobody there that was professional by any means. It's not as easy as what the movies make it seem to be, but it was a great opportunity. And again, I highly recommend, participating in the class. The next class, I believe, is going to be in late September, early October. If you're interested, please go to the Reynoldsburg City Police webpage, and they'll actually have the application for that. So it's a great 8-week series. We also have an upcoming women's defense class, which I highly recommend. We got a kind of a preview of this about 2 weeks ago. The next class is going to start on April 4th, and it's the 4th, 6th, and 11th and 13th from 6 to 8:30. It's a mix of in-class and actual practical experience with everything. It's for women 12 and up. So I do highly recommend participation in that. If you're interested, again, it's on the webpage and you can email the officer in charge of that. There will also be another class in September, September 6th, 7th, 12th, and 14th. Again, the same thing from 6 to 8:30. I do highly recommend you join it. It's unfortunate that those classes would be necessary, but at the same time, life is what life is, and we want to make sure that everyone is as protected as possible with that. We do have some community commission meetings coming up next week. On Wednesday, we have the Military Recognition Committee meeting, which is about the Memorial Plaza. We hope to have some designs, preliminary designs for the monuments that would be there, recognizing the POW and MIA status of the city, as well as the Purple Heart status of the city. Hopefully we get that information in. If not, we'll kind of shift and go right into planning for our Memorial Day ceremony, which, believe it or not, will be here before we know it. We are also going to be talking about traffic and transportation, another fun topic that has come up. There have been a couple of areas of town that are very focused in on incidents of speeding. And so what we've done over the last year and a half is develop kind of a process of, all right, if you have a reported of a speeder in a particular area, what comes next? So we talk about, obviously increased enforcement in the area. We bring in the your speed here indicators that kind of track how fast people are going in certain areas. Provide some hard data to it. And then from there, we move to the next step, which is talking with community members about what their thoughts are on it. Do they see this, not see this? In one particular area of town off Priestley from Wagner is an area where a number of residents actually got together and filled out a petition to put in some sort of speed obstruction, whether at the time whether it was speed bumps, speed tables, speed humps, whatever the case may be. And so a majority of the residents in the area that signed the petition were in favor of that. So we're moving forward with that. Ultimately, it's going to be council's call on if they want to do this, because anything like this, speed bumps are very contentious. There's a lot of people who want them because of the safety factor, but then there's a lot of other people who absolutely want nothing to do with them for any number of reasons. However, this area is a little bit different, given the narrowness of the road, given the very passionate community members that are looking for some sort of an improvement in there. So that's why we're looking at this. But at that council meeting, which we don't have yet, we don't know, it just depends on when all the bids come in and things of that nature. But we'll make sure everybody knows about it. Members are going to be able to have their opportunity to say whether or not they do want them or not want them. And ultimately, council is going to be the one that makes the call on that. Sometimes, they were speed bumps on my road on Kingsley before, right before I moved in, that had been removed. Ultimately, that's what a lot of people think is going to happen. They're great for a year or two, and then all of a sudden people get tired of them and they get moved away. We're going to have to wait and see. But sometimes the responsibility of this office and the city is to listen to constituents. And if the constituents are very dedicated to this particular thing, then we provide them those opportunities to address the issues that they have. So I look forward to that and working in partnership with the community members all the way around. We'll probably also talk about other things, the traffic and transportation. I'm sure the roundabout at the 5-way will come up at some point in time. So that'll be something that will be talked about as well. Moving on to development. Hopefully you got a chance to see the 10 TV segment on what will eventually replace the old Happy Dragon. If not, I'm sure you go to the 10 TV website and just check out the link on that. You can watch a little bit about that. The design and all of that will be a planning commission coming up next week, and the purchase agreement hopefully will be on council's agenda next week. If not, it'll be the next meeting in March. Just finishing out the details of that. But it's going to be a private developer. The city is going to sell the land. The developer is going to build it. And, we've talked about some of the cool things that are going to be in there. There's going to be some office space. There's going to be coffee, ice cream, possibly, restaurant, medical space, things of that nature that will generate some revenue for the city. And that revenue is then going to be used to actually do further improvements throughout the city, whether they're for stormwater, sewer infrastructure, things like that. But that's how the city of Reynoldsburg gets its money. It's through the income tax. So those businesses that are there, you want to grow them. So that grows that revenue for the city to address those other issues that are out there, because infrastructure is not cheap. It is incredibly expensive. And hopefully, we talked earlier about the infrastructure money coming from the federal government. That check is in the mail. I'm sure we've all heard that one. So until that gets in here, we have to make do with what we have. So that's going on in development. We also have a little bit of news. I got a question about talking about Intel. Intel, is going to be over in just outside of New Albany, which is actually, believe it or not, the facility is actually going to be built 10 miles down the road from Mink and Main Street. So it's 10 miles. It's not that far. And so a lot of people are asking, well, how's this going to impact Reynoldsburg? The most immediate thing that it's going to impact is housing. You're probably going to see housing values go up. We've already seen that over the last year, probably going to continue to see that. You're going to see an increased demand for housing in the Central Ohio region in general. Reynoldsburg has got very little place left to grow in terms of housing, so I don't imagine that there's going to be too much more new housing. If anything, it might be some redeveloped areas. But for the most part, that's going to be kind of limited. What we're really curious about is similar to what Marysville went through when Honda came up, is how did those other businesses around it that supported Honda develop? So that's what we're doing and what we're focusing on. Some of it could be logistics, some of it could be manufacturing, some of it could be tech, but we're working as hard as we can in conjunction with our partners in Licking County and Franklin County, Jobs Ohio and One Columbus, to let them know that, yes, we are available to have some of those jobs come into our community because we want to support Intel and the great development that it's out there. It's not going to impact us directly, but those businesses around it will be there. And I think it'll help grow the community all the way around. So that's some good development news for us. Any questions so far? All right. Next one, I want to give a huge shout out to our girl wrestling team. Rowan Strouder finished 5th at states competition this past weekend, and Summer Betts finished 8th. So amazing job, ladies. Great job representing the Reynoldsburg City School District. So congratulations to the two of you. May have to come in sometime and talk about your experiences and how groundbreaking of a thing it is. So congratulations and good job. Look forward to more in the years to come. We also have our Lady Raider basketball team playing tonight at Westerville Central. And then we have our boys will be playing on Friday night in their first round of the playoff game versus the winner of Central Crossing and Groveport. I don't know if they played yet. I didn't have a chance to check earlier today. So whichever one of those teams won, that's who the boys basketball team is going to play. So keep in mind for that and let's cheer on those Raiders over the next couple of days. Now to something that is good for the soul, but maybe not necessarily for the swimsuit season. We have a Girl Scout cookie sale coming up here. It's going to be this Friday and Saturday, really Friday and Saturday through March 20th. The local Girl Scout group is going to be selling their Girl Scout cookies at the PNC site just across the street from the city. They're going to be there Fridays from 5 to 7 and Saturdays from 10 to 6. So you can go ahead and get your favorite cookies out there. Mine are Thin Mints. And contrary to popular opinion, I do believe a serving size of Thin Mints is 1 sleeve, not whatever horrible things are saying, like 4 cookies. No one eats 4 Thin Mint cookies just once, unless those are the last 4. That's just my opinion. You can agree or disagree with that one. Also wanted to give an opportunity for those of you that are out there that want to come to the Chamber of Commerce. They're having their lunch next week. It's going to be at the Reynoldsburg United Methodist Church off Graham Road, and they're going to be featuring information and news from the city that I'm going to present, very similar to the State of the City address. So if you'd like to come in person and actually view that, and then at the end of it, there'll be a question and answer session. You can ask me anything there as well. That's going to be next Thursday. You do have to register ahead of time, so check out their website to go ahead and register for that one, but you can come in, have lunch, talk with other local business community members, as well as listen to what's going on in the city, and then have a chance to ask some questions specific about that. So hopefully you can make it out next week. And I know we got just a couple more things. The Reynoldsburg rescheduled spaghetti dinner for the Community Association is on March 26th, on Saturday, March 26th. At Messiah Lutheran. So we got that. It's from 5 to 8 p.m. If you're interested in tickets, give Chuck Cochran a call. He's not doing much. He's just standing by the phone right now, 614-580-7218. Give him a call. It's great food for a great cause. The Reynoldsburg Community Association sponsors the 4th of July parade, the International Festival that will be in May. And then we also have Christmas on the Town and I think the Halloween Community Association Festival as well. So this is their big fundraiser for that. So go ahead and support them. Did also want to mention that we have our Tomato Festival volunteer meetings coming up. That's next Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. at City Hall. We're getting closer to get all musical acts confirmed, so we're working on it. Just waiting patiently to get that information in. Sometimes musicians are referred to as divas. I don't know. They're just taking their time with some things, but there's a lot of things going on. We're going to be expanding some offerings for our Tomato Festival. So if you want to be a part of it, feel free and take a look at that. We also are going to be opening up the window for the Tomato Festival Queen applications on April 1st. So we got about a month to go, but if you're interested in that, that information will be on the website and you can contact Michelle Brennan here at City Hall. She's in the Parks and Rec department and she's going to be heading up the pageant yet again this year. So we thank her for her contributions on that one. Before I move on, any questions?
We did have
All right, got a question.
It says is there an update on the development of the hockey complex on East Main?
Yes, they are working very hard on securing funding and working on financing, and then also doing some of the design work on it as well. So they are doing that. Keep in mind, this is a huge project. Ultimately, it's going to be a $25 million facility, and they're going to be pulling in resources from a number of different things. What they're trying to do at this point, a lot of their stuff is focused on, generating that revenue for the initial build phase, but then also securing those partnerships that are needed for once the facility is open. How do they sustain it? That's when we talk about, the other things that will be there, the restaurant, the athletic equipment stores, the sports medicine facility, the potential hotel and restaurant, all of those things that they're working on to secure that up. So that way they can get it all ready to go. And when the time is right, that's when, boom, they're going to be moving on that to get that constructed. So they are working hard. We do have weekly meetings with representatives from Center Ice to kind of get an update on where they're at. So it's plugging along through the process. So we're looking forward to it. All right. Next week is going to be a very special show. This week we recognize Black History Month, but next week is going to be the beginning of March, which is National Women's History Month. And we're going to kick it off with an amazing example of a professional woman. And that's our very own Reynoldsburg tax administrator, Lori Geishel. She's going to come and talk to us about income tax. No, really, it's going to be a fun show. She is brilliant. She has done amazing things in her short time here at City Hall, working with some of the things that are related to income taxes. She's going to be able to answer questions if you have about that dreaded RETA, things of that nature. Not too many questions, because I think the auditor is going to be presenting to council in the not too distant future about information about RETA, if the city were to look in a different direction, or why is it that the city is utilizing RETA. Those are things on the auditor's office. So if you have questions, you can ask him, but I know Lori's going to be here next week to talk about that. We're obviously keeping an eye on our income tax revenue. We're looking at ways to expand it. We're looking at ways to partner, and it's a great relationship between my office and Lori. It's been fabulous. So she's going to be a great guest to kick off National Women's History Month. So we're looking forward to that next week. Any other questions? Last second things? All right, tomorrow night, I believe there might be some ice in the forecast. So again, kind of keep that in mind all the way across. So if you need a little bit of salt, things like that, go ahead and get that out there. But drive safe, be respectful to everybody out there. I know Facebook can always be entertaining. Just remember, be nice. I mean, there's no reason to not be nice. Make sure you put your shopping carts away. There's no snow on the ground anymore, so you can put your shopping carts away. Please do that. It's always helpful. And have a wonderful rest of the week. We will see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.